courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
It's time for Veterans Issues, the show that brings you information about veterans, military, and their family. Now here's your host, Ken Rollins.
Welcome to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins here. Appreciate you tuning in this week. Today's guest is an old friend of mine, and I say old friend because we both old, but we've been friends a long time. It's something for all you. He's a World War II veteran, and he's a star of a documentary called My Anniston. His name is Edward Wood. We're going to talk to him. We'll come back, stay where you are, get you a pen. Be right back. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. Today we're talking with a friend of mine that goes back a long way, and he's a World War II veteran. We worked together in the past, and he's had a documentary out for quite a while. It's called My Anniston. You can Google that, My Anniston by Edward Wood, and you might want to Google that and see what it's all about. But it's very interesting. It's about the life and times of Edward Wood, and there's no way you can put that on one documentary. It needs to be a mini-series. Welcome to the show, Edward.
Thank you.
Good to have you back up here, buddy.
I appreciate the invitation.
It's good to be seen nowadays, above ground. Edward and I, let's get some background on Edward. People that might not know you, you're from Clay County, is that right?
Right.
And I know some of this stuff, but I don't know all of it. You're born in Clay County, and take me from there.
That is correct. I was born in Clay County, grew up on a farm. We were known as what they call sharecroppers.
How much sharing did you get? Very
little sharing. We did a lot of cropping, but very little sharing.
Yeah, that's the way it went.
Life was pretty tough back in those days. World War II came along, and there were 4 of us brothers drafted into the military at the same time, and 3 of us was in the Pacific at the same time. And it was very interesting. Yeah, that's 2 of them the same island. I was stationed on an aircraft carrier. There was 2 of us in the Navy, 1 was in the Army, and 1 was in the Marine Corps.
Wow. Of what year was that? 45,
1940. I went in 1945 because I was the youngest of the 4, but the others went in early 40s.
Wow. And it was all in the Pacific at the same time.
All in the Pacific.
Wow, that's it. I did not know that. And I know some of your brothers. And it's I said earlier it'd be hard to go to Clay County and swing a ball bat and not hit a wood. So many of y'all down.
Most of them are gone now.
Yeah.
They've gotten older.
Yeah.
And,
they made a mark. And the reason I want you on here today is you and I have some history. Well, first of all, you worked big time in the Democratic Party, and years ago I used to be a Democrat, and I'm now a conservative. But we worked together about 20-something years, and I think we had a great relationship then. We had one of the great relationships since then.
Right.
But our political differences have not separated us. We didn't, just because you believe one thing and I believe another, never divided us. And this country is messed up right now because of that same thing I'm talking about. One believes this, the other believes this, so let's fight about it rather than, and you have been, you was there for the documentary is about the burning of the bus, the Freedom Riders, and you were part of that. You came up on it, you and Mary that day.
That's how it got started. I saw the bus burn. I was there when the bus burned. In fact, I was following the bus. I knew that it was coming through. Everybody knew it.
Yeah.
And I knew they had a problem at the bus station. It was Mother's Day in 1961, and I was taking my wife out to dinner at a place down on 202 called the Ark that had some fantastic catfish.
Still do.
And I was taking my wife down for dinner, and one of the few places that black people could go at that time, we couldn't go inside, but they had a large area in the back where anybody, white or black, could go back. They had benches and tables, and you wanted to give your order, and then you could eat back there. And a lot of people, even white people, ate back there because they didn't want to go inside. They liked the outside best. But I pulled right up behind the bus. I thought they was already gone to Birmingham, and as a matter of fact, the tires were slashed here at the bus station, and I had to pull off out by Forsyth's store, and so I pulled up behind them and thought I could do something. The bus had just begun to smoke, and there was about 6 loads of Klansmen pulled up, and they made me get back in my car and leave. So I drove down the road about a mile, I guess, or wherever I could find a place to turn around. I came back, and by the time I got back, the bus was just a blaze of fire, and the Freedom Riders was laying all outside the road screaming and crying. It was not a very beautiful sight.
There's a, back years ago when you and I used to work together, you told me a story about going to a drugstore downtown and picking up medicine, and you could reach over and touch the counter where the malts,
Right.
hamburgers were served, and your son Pee Wee was with you, and he wanted to get a burger, and I think it was about just a few years ago. He's in his 40s now, and just a few years ago, you still wasn't able to tell him why he couldn't.
Never have told him. We went to get a prescription filled, and my son was about 4 or 5 years old, and they had a lunch counter. The pharmacist was in the back, and we had to pass right by the table where people were eating hamburgers, and he wanted a hamburger. So he said, Dad, I want a hamburger. Well, I knew he couldn't have one because they didn't serve black people there, and I couldn't tell him.
Yeah.
So I just picked him up in my arm. He started crying, and we started back out the door, and somebody hollered and said, "Did you want something, boy?" And I said, "No."
Yeah.
So I went outside, and my son was still just crying, and I made up my mind that day if I could ever do anything to change that system, I would certainly do it. And I've done everything that I possibly can since that time. I'm still active in getting people registered to vote, to send people to make laws that applies across the board, and not single me out as a black person or any other person, just an American citizen.
Well, people, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was that word racism. And I use an analogy that if you put enough water in a cup of coffee, after a while it's not coffee, it's just water. And just loosely throwing the word racism around, like somebody don't like Obama, you're racist. If I don't like so-and-so, you're racist. They use that lightly, but I'm gonna tell you something. There was a young guy came home from the Navy, and he was on a bus. And in the front area was several empty seats.
Wow.
And in the back there were no seats, but there was a line for coloreds, and in the front was for white only. And that Navy guy, in his uniform, had to stand rather than sit in one of those empty seats because he was black.
That is
That
correct.
guy was Edward Wood.
That's
And
correct.
that, my friend, is the definition, one of the definitions, just like the killings over in the church over in Charlotte. They are racist things that happen, but let's don't call everything racist, because then it gets watered down that it don't mean anything. Because we have plenty of racism to go around. It's a real thing, wouldn't you agree? But,
One thing I want to make clear from the very beginning, that I grew up in a segregated society. I still live in one, but I had white friends as well as black friends when I was growing up. The law said separate but equal. Some of them did not like the law any better than I did, but they couldn't do anything about it, so you had to obey the law. Well, I was drafted in the military along with 3 brothers. There 4 of us in there, and I came home on my first furlough, as you stated.
I want you to hold that because we got to go to a break. We're going to take up there when you come back. Stay where you are. This is a very interesting. I know where he's going with that, and everybody out there needs to hear this. We'll be right back after this note. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins. We're talking about Edward Wood, and Edward was talking about, he's a World War II veteran, and we were talking about the word racist, and you were talking about when you was in Clay County and you just come back from the service. Let's take it up where I cut you off there.
Right. Well, I had hardly been away from home all night, any night except I was fishing or possum hunting, and I didn't know much about the Japanese or the Germans. I wasn't angry with anybody, yet I went and served my country, and I'm glad I did. I went willingly, along with 3 brothers. And when I came back on the bus, standing up, looking at 5 or 6 vacant seats and couldn't sit down because of the color of my skin. I didn't like that. I didn't think that was right. I still don't think it was right. And I've done everything in my power since then to change that situation, and we have made some progress. We have not arrived, but we've made progress.
Some progress.
That we have made some progress. I came home on my furlough, went to town. Everybody went to town on Saturday afternoon, whether you had any money or not. That's just what everybody did. You get a chance to see people you hadn't seen since last Saturday. And I met one of the local farmers there, and I had on a naval uniform, being black. And he said, "Boy, where'd you steal that uniform?" I said, "I didn't steal it, Uncle Sam put it on me." He said, "Ain't no niggers in the Navy. You better pull that uniform off before some of these white folks pull it off of you." I said, "Well, you're white." But he decided he didn't want to pull it off of me. But things were different back in those days. It was wrong, but it was the law, as I stated earlier. There was a lot of white people, friends of mine. We ate at each other's table. We fished together. We hunted together. There are good and bad people in every race.
Every race, absolutely.
But there are those who are easily persuaded. I might not feel a certain way, but I'm concerned about what my fellow brother or sister thinks of me, so I'm going to act in a different way in many instances. But I'm not like that. I'm whatever you see, whether you like it or not. What you see is what you get. And I found that to be true with Ken Rollins. And while I'm speaking of Ken Rollins, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you for not only for myself, but for the many, many veterans that you've helped. I've known you now for between 30 and 40 years. I have the highest respect for you, and I certainly do admire you for what you've done.
Thank you, Edward. I know that comes from the heart too. I couldn't, and that they take all the other prizes and stuff away. That means a whole lot to me, more than I could tell you. The thing that happened to you after you come back from the service, I see. You know, a lot of things happened to us that came back from Vietnam that shouldn't have happened. Today, in our veteran system, veterans are getting turned away, and all these things, bad things happening to veterans. But I want the veterans out there to just imagine what it would be like to just get on a bus and no place to sit down, but them 6 or 7 seats are empty, and because of the color of your skin, you can't sit down, and that's racism. That's the difference in what we're calling it right now. And when you go into a church and you kill 9 people like that idiot did over there, that's racism. He did it as a racist. Just don't even mince them words. We know what that is. But when you say you try to make it better, sometimes your actions, like we talk about in religion, if your actions speak. You was a union steward down at M&H Valve. You probably don't even remember that. But my brother, when I found out I was working at the depot with you, he told me about Edward Wood. And he always had one word that went around your name called fair.
That's
Black
right,
guy, black union steward, you was always fair. When I sit at my desk over here and your desk over there, and we worked on the floor together at the depot for 20 years or so, the word was fair. May not like what you say. I'd send materials to you. You would reject them sometime, but you was fair because they wasn't right. I thought they was right, but you didn't. But now there's a lot out there that this country could use of some Edward Wood language that says that, tell the truth and stuff. You working with your party to get people registered to vote. To have that ability and not use it, they don't realize what people went through to get that, to have that.
I agree.
That's the part that makes it sick. We had, even in the Republican Party, 50-something% didn't even vote last time. And so people fought and died when that bus incident was going on, all that stuff. These people, these warriors, these freedom riders, that's what one of the things they were traveling for, to make sure they could have rights to do these things.
That is correct.
I don't know, it's just sickening sometimes just to watch what's happening. The division that people talk about, you remember you said something about the Klan a while ago.
Well,
When I grew up, the Klan were feared by me and my brothers as anywhere, because they started off as a militia, and your parents would say, if you don't behave, we're going to turn tell the Klan on you. And the Klan would make, if a husband beating his wife, it'd be on his front door in a heartbeat. But they turned bad just like a lot of other things did. And it was a hateful, awful group, especially right in this area that we live in right here, that you had. But you got, let's talk about them kids and grandkids you done got. You got one that flying them Chinook helicopters. And if I'm not mistaken, and Hurricane Sandy came up through the Virginia beach, that boy was in behind the piloting that Chinook that flew by the site with a Statue of Liberty over it. Wasn't that, is that true?
Yeah, he flies a Chinook. He's been to Afghanistan 3 times already, but he's back in the States at this point.
That's Dante
And his
we're
sister
talking.
also was in Afghanistan. She got injured over there, so she's a wounded warrior now.
Wow.
But my family is kind of a military family. There are quite a few of them, nephews and nieces in the military. And it's good for both ways. It's good for our country and it's good for them. There's a certain amount of discipline that goes with the military that did a lot for me, and it does a lot for a lot of other people.
I want to take this time. First, I want to do a shout out to our friend, Lynn Waller is her name, but she used to be Lynn Barley. And for Lynn, that's from me and Edward to you. We thought we'd give you a shout out. But I want you to tell quick, we got less than a couple minutes to tell this story. You told me about the baby bed. Let's go from there. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this grandfather went to visit his grandbaby. And when he got to his daughter's house, he found the baby was in the playpen and it was just screaming, trying to get out. So naturally, the granddad bent over to try to reach his grandchild and bring him out of the playpen. And his daughter said, no, don't take him out. He's under punishment. You're going to have to stay in there. So the granddaddy could not take his grandchild out. So he got in the playpen with the grandchild. And as I read this article, I thought about Jesus Christ, the Son of God. This is what he does for us. Each of us has problems along the road of life. And Christ will not take us out of it, but he will get in there and help us. And I love that.
That analogy just tore me up last time you tell me about that. I thought, man, whoever thought of something like that, he just gets in there with you rather than stand out talking down to you. That is
Exactly.
That's so good. And you've been people talk about the weekend warrior stuff, Christians, stuff like that. You've never been. I've always known you to be a godly man. Loves your family, loves your country. You love your country as much as anybody I ever know. And you walk the walk. And we're running out of time, so I just wanted to make sure I get that on record that people out there yak and talk, but this man right here does the thing. Edward, I appreciate this, man.
Thank you, Ken.
I know you're coming back. We got a lot more to talk about. Look at all the stuff here that I left. But we got a lot to talk about, Edward Wood. So appreciate that. We're going to go to a break, come back. I've got news that you can use. Get your pen. Welcome back to Veterans Issues. Ken Rollins here, and we're talking about this is news that you can use. So I want you to, this SB 502 by Senator Dial and Senator Marsh was the unearmarking bill. And there's no action on anything right now because they're in recess. But we want to stay tuned to that because I got a feeling the unearmarking bill will come back in some manner. And when it does, we're going to have to activate the Army because we can't allow that to happen because the unearmarking of legislation, simply this, it unearmarks the funds for Education Trust Fund, it unearmarks the funds for the Department of Veterans Affairs, what we call the Veterans Assistance Fund, and this has to be done at the voters' ballot box, but they got the money to advertise and make you think it's a good thing. But just imagine, right now we're taking care of 4 veterans' homes in the state of Alabama. 704 veterans could end up and be putting on the street out of the veterans' home. We have a cemetery that's down in South Alabama for veterans free. That's the first state cemetery ever in the history of Alabama. We got that veteran cemetery. It's free burial. Doesn't cost you a penny. It costs us $350,000 a year to keep it up. And I wondered how long that would last if we turned our veterans over to the political system. On top of that, and I got to tell you this, we bring in close to $1 billion. The Department of Veterans Affairs brings in close to $1 billion to the state of Alabama. We don't build any roads, don't do anything for us, no tax abatements or anything like that. That's federal dollars that our offices in the 67 counties brings in, $1 billion. We're not a welfare agency. And then all the GI Bill that we've got, the GI Bill, we send people to college at Ayers, Gadsden State, Auburn, Alabama, all JSU. We send people with their benefits. They go to college. And that's federal dollars coming into the state of Alabama, into the school system, that we'd be relying on the politicians if we could get them together and agree on something. So we're going to be hearing a lot about that. I'm not going to let it go. And so I'll keep you posted on it. Now, the VA clinic over there is the parking. Should be ready any day, and I hope to tell you about it on the next show if I can, that the parking, we'll have over 2,000 parking spots over to Birmingham VA, a new women's clinic, and it's going to be, finally we'll have something of our own, not having to share with a children's hospital or some of the others. I want to give a shout out to old boy I ain't seen in a long time. Finally got to see him. He's a Vietnam veteran. Name is Danny Alberts. And a shout out to you, Danny. And let's see what all else I need to talk about here. Oh yeah, pay it forward. I can't do a show without talking about paying it forward. Did it this morning. A lady in front of me had a Georgia tag, and she was blown away when she found out her meal was paid for. And I felt a lot better about it than she did. So that's a good thing that you can get a blessing out of if you'll pay it forward for folks. So I don't want people out there looking around hunting me down and hoping that I'm going to pay for their stuff, because that ain't the way it's supposed to work. But there's a lot of people know what I drive, and they know my tag number because ain't many people got the tag number 1. So if they see me, they're going to run me down and say, hope he pays mine and pay it forward. All right, let's see what else I got to do here. Okay, I want to keep asking you to please buy that. When you go to get your tag renewed, get the law enforcement tag. It's got all the colors in it you want to, and it honors the fallen. It honors those who have given their life in law enforcement. I ask you to do that, and it would make everybody feel the funds of it, help us build that memorial we're trying to build up here in Centennial Memorial Park. And this week, the salute goes out to advocates for peace and understanding. And there's nobody does that any better than the man I had on the show today, Edward Wood. So this salute's for Edward Wood. We'll see you next week.